Episode 3. The Light Between. The sky above Gotham turned the color of infected wounds. Yellow light bled through the atmosphere like poison, casting the city in shades of jaundice and terror. People who had been anxiously watching the news now screamed and ran for shelter, their primal instincts recognizing what their conscious minds couldn't name. Something was coming that predated humanity, predated Earth, predated fear itself. Bruce Wayne stood on the roof of Wayne Tower, watching Parallax descend. It wasn't a creature in any conventional sense. It was a concept given form, an ever-shifting mass of yellow energy that suggested eyes, suggested teeth, suggested the worst thing each observer had ever imagined. It was vast, spanning miles, and it was hungry. Bruce Wayne. The voice wasn't sound. It was pressure. A weight on his consciousness that made his vision swim and his ring flare defensively. I remember the taste of your fear. When you were 8 years old. When the pearls hit the ground. You weren't there, Bruce said, but his certainty wavered. Could something this ancient have been watching even then? I am always there. Every moment of fear in every mind in the universe. I taste them all. But yours was special. Parallax's form contracted, focusing itself. And for a moment, Bruce saw something almost humanoid within the chaos. A figure made of concentrated terror, wearing shadows like skin. You didn't break. You should have broken. Every calculation, every probability said that child would shatter into 1,000 pieces. But you took the fear and made it a weapon. The entity's voice held something Bruce hadn't expected. Fascination. You stole from me, Bruce Wayne. You took my gift and perverted it into something I don't understand. And now you've awakened something that should have stayed buried forever. Bruce raised his ring. The hybrid light, emerald and gold swirling together, pushed back against Parallax's presence, creating a sphere of clarity in the madness. I didn't awaken anything. I just stopped pretending that will and fear are opposites. They are opposites. That's how the universe works. That's how I work. Order against chaos. Light against dark. Will against fear. No. Bruce's voice was steady, despite the cosmic horror looming above him. That's how the Guardians wanted the universe to work, because it was easier to control. But the truth is messier. Will needs fear to have meaning. Courage doesn't exist without something to be afraid of. Philosophy. Parallax's contempt was palpable. You think philosophy will save you? Philosophy is just truth that people are afraid to admit. Bruce's ring blazed brighter. And the truth is, you're not the embodiment of fear. You're the embodiment of fear without choice. Pure terror, paralyzing, meaningless. But that's not what fear is supposed to be. He rose into the air, the hybrid light lifting him toward the entity that had consumed civilizations. Fear is supposed to be information, a warning, a chance to prepare, to adapt, to overcome. What you represent is fear corrupted. Fear as an end rather than a beginning. You dare lecture me? I am older than stars. I have consumed minds that would shatter yours like glass. Then consume me. Bruce opened his arms, his ring's defensive barriers dissolving. Try. See what happens when you face someone who's already accepted every fear he has. Parallax struck. Yellow light engulfed Bruce Wayne, flooding into his mind through every crack, every vulnerability, every buried trauma he'd spent 30 years processing. The entity expected him to fight, to struggle, to provide the resistance that made the feeding sweeter. Bruce didn't resist. He welcomed it. Come in, his mind whispered. See everything. The murder, the cave, the bats. See it all. Parallax dove deeper, confused by the lack of barriers. It found Thomas Wayne's face, frozen in the moment before death. It found Martha Wayne's pearls, each one a world of grief. It found the child Bruce had been, broken and bleeding in the alley. And it found what that child had become. 30 years of discipline. 30 years of facing fear every single night and choosing to act anyway. 30 years of understanding terror so completely that it had become just another tool, another data point, another ally in the war against chaos. What is this? Parallax recoiled. This isn't fear. This is mastery, Bruce thought. Not control. Not suppression. Integration. Fear and will aren't enemies in my mind. They're partners. And you're not consuming me. His eyes opened, blazing with the hybrid light. You're feeding me. The transformation was visible from space. Bruce Wayne hung at the center of a maelstrom of green and gold, his body barely visible within the energy that poured through him. Parallax screamed, actually screamed, as the human it had tried to consume began drawing on it instead. Fear energy flowed into Bruce in torrents, not corrupting him, not overwhelming him, but joining the will energy his ring already provided. The hybrid light expanded, intensified, became something that made the universe itself hold its breath. Stop! Parallax tried to pull away, but Bruce's mind held it like an anchor. This is impossible. No mortal can— I'm not trying to destroy you, Bruce said, his voice resonating across dimensions. I'm trying to heal you. Heal me? The Guardians broke you. They split the original light and trapped you in half of it. Made you into a monster because they couldn't handle what you really were. But I can feel it now. What you were before. What you're supposed to be. Bruce reached deeper, past Parallax's hunger and rage, past eons of corruption and isolation, to something buried at the entity's core. A memory. The first moment of fear ever felt. A primitive consciousness on a primitive world, sensing danger for the first time. But the memory didn't end with terror. It ended with action. That ancient being choosing to move, to fight, to survive despite the fear. That was the original light. Not will alone, not fear alone, but the choice between them. The moment of courage that defined what it meant to be alive. I remember. Parallax's voice changed, becoming something smaller, something almost young. I remember when I was whole. When you were the light of the first choice, Bruce finished. Before the Guardians split you apart and told everyone you were a monster. They were afraid of me, of what I could do. I was too powerful, they said. No one should be able to wield will and fear together. They were wrong. Bruce's hybrid light wrapped around Parallax like a cocoon. And I'm going to prove it. On Oa, the Guardians watched in horror. Their screens showed energy readings that shouldn't have been possible. A human, a mortal, somehow containing both the green and yellow lights without being torn apart. Worse, he was somehow healing the very entity they'd spent eons trying to contain. This must be stopped, Ganthet said, his ancient voice tight with fear. If Parallax is purified, if it regains what it was before we intervened, then the core becomes obsolete, Sade finished. The central batteries become unnecessary. Everything we've built for 3 billion years, everything we've built is a lie. The voice came from Katma Tui, who had just entered the chamber with a contingent of loyal lanterns behind her. Kilowog was among them, his expression grim but determined. Abensur discovered the truth before he died, Katma continued. He found records you thought you'd destroyed. He knew that Parallax wasn't a monster. It was a victim. Something you broke because you couldn't control it. You don't understand the necessity, Ganthet began. I understand that you've been lying to the core for billions of years. Katma's ring blazed. I understand that you split the original light because unified willpower and fear was too powerful for you to manipulate. And I understand that Bruce Wayne is doing something none of you ever could. She gestured to the screens, where Bruce's hybrid light was now engulfing Parallax entirely. He's giving it a choice. In the space above Earth, something unprecedented was occurring. Parallax, ancient, terrible, hungry Parallax, was changing. The yellow of its essence was mixing with green, both colors fading into something new. A light that was neither, that was both, that was the thing the universe had been missing since the Guardian's ancient crime. Bruce Wayne floated at the center of the transformation. His consciousness expanded beyond anything human, touching something infinite. He saw the original light's history, how it had been born from the first choice, spread across the young universe, given every sentient species the gift of courage. How the Guardians, young then, idealistic, had discovered it and decided it was too dangerous. How they'd split it into will and fear, hoping to control what they couldn't understand. He saw the war that followed. The first lanterns, wielding the green light, hunting down the yellow. Parallax's slow corruption as eons of isolation twisted it into the monster it had become. The lies layered upon lies until no one remembered what had been lost. And he saw what could be. A universe where courage wasn't a rare gift, but a fundamental force. Where every being had the ability to feel fear and choose action. Where the Guardian's control gave way to something messier, more chaotic, but infinitely more real. "You see it now," Parallax whispered, and its voice was different, clearer, younger, almost wondering. "You see what I was, what I could be again." "I see it," Bruce confirmed. "But I can't do this alone. The transformation requires more will than any single mind can provide." "Then let us call them." Every being who ever felt fear and chose courage. Every mind that understands what we're trying to create. Bruce reached out through the hybrid light, and his call echoed across the planet below. In Gotham, a child who was afraid of the dark took her first step into an unlit room. In Metropolis, a firefighter ran into a burning building, despite knowing the risks. In Washington, a soldier with PTSD chose to attend his first support group meeting. In Beijing, an activist published a post criticizing her government. In Sao Paulo, a boy told his father the truth about who he loved. 1,000,000 acts of courage, each one tiny, each one profound. And each one added its light to Bruce's call. The hybrid energy around him exploded outward, fed by every choice on Earth, by every moment where fear had been acknowledged and overcome anyway. It wasn't the cold light of willpower or the hungry light of fear. It was something warmer. Something that felt like coming home. Parallax screamed, not in pain this time, but in release. 3 billion years of corruption burning away in the face of 1 billion courageous choices. Its form collapsed inward, contracted, became something smaller and brighter and infinitely more powerful. When the light faded, 2 figures floated above Earth. Bruce Wayne, exhausted but whole. His ring now permanently transformed into something that pulsed with colors no spectrum had ever recorded. And beside him, a humanoid figure made of pure white light. Parallax no longer, but something ancient and new at once. Something that looked at Bruce with eyes full of gratitude and wonder. "You gave me back my choice," it said. And its voice was the sound of courage itself. "After so long, I finally remember who I was meant to be." "Who are you?" Bruce asked. The entity smiled. "I am what the Guardians never wanted to exist. I am the moment between fear and action. I am the choice that makes heroes." It reached out and touched Bruce's ring, and he felt the connection solidify. Not a binding or a corruption, but a partnership. "I am Ion," the entity said, "and together, we are going to change everything." Below them, Gotham still sprawled in shadow and light. Above them, the stars watched in silence. And somewhere on Oa, The Guardians felt their 3 billion-year empire begin to crack.